a debt shift from a utility enterprise fund, as long as you're not raising it twice. So we can raise it this way in taxes and move the debt service associated with raising it here to the general fund, or we can raise it in the enterprise fund by leaving that debt there and incorporating it in the rate calculation. But we can't raise it twice.
Real quick question on the new growth, 800,000. That's an estimate based on best guesses, building permits, and I don't see what it was last year to make a comparison.
It was 800,000 last. It's been fairly consistent. 800,000 has been the consistent conservative number. Again, you know, with revenues, we want to be conservative, because if we come in low, that's a bad thing.
Right. But it's been 800,000, not just budgeted, but realized 800,000 on average.
Actually, last year we realized $1.6 million.
I had a feeling it was a much bigger number.
And that is because the development of, you know, the housing development up at Gloucester Crossing came online. So that was kind of a one-time only when something that big comes online in a chunk.
So there's no way to really project, because there's such a timing delay between building permit and development and assessment and taxation. Do you think next year is going to be anywhere close to 1.6, or we really think it's just going to be 800,000?
I don't know. Do you see a $100 million development coming into town that's going to be, you know, go in the ground by a year from now? No, I don't. So, you know, I mean,
what I'm saying is, from a timing thing, we'd have some information now to project that number, right? Because it would take at least a year from the time someone put a shovel in the ground before we're actually taxing them, right?
well, right. So you can take a look at building permits. However, the problem with the building permit is that when is the value generated by that permit going to be realized from the assessor's point of view? Is that going to be next year if you get a building permit now, or is that going to come online in fiscal 24 because the assessors were able to recognize it by June 30th, fiscal 23? Or if they aren't able to recognize the increase in value, then it's not going to come on until the next year. So the answer to your question is, it's really too complicated. So we come up with a reasonable estimate of where we think it's going to be. We might move it around a little bit if we know absolutely positively for sure that something big and specific is coming online in a particular year.
I
But
wish we could have
we
some
don't
better.
usually know that.
I wish
We
could
do
have
We do have a number of healthy new construction ongoing that we're all aware of, whether it's the Washington Street development up there to the left, or the property at the Ocean View Inn, which has been partially built out and is continuing to be built out, the Upper Banjo Pond development that's proposed off Essex Avenue, and even the Espresso's building, which will be, the way it's going, probably be occupied within a year at this point. But
the Thatcher Road development that probably hasn't been assessed yet, I'm guessing, or hasn't been accounted for yet.
Well, again, so, you know, we
I
want
was
to be
complaining about the traffic parking last night, the safety of crossing Thatcher Road, yes.
Yeah, we want to be a little bit careful. Again, the assessors bring value online within certain timeframes. So it's not unusual for a particular project for the value of the entirety of the project to come in over 3 fiscal years or 4 fiscal years.
Right.
So again, you know, knowing how much of something is going to come on is a little bit of a guess, of a crapshoot right now to tell you that something positively is going to come online.
It looks like we don't have enough what they call leading indicators to be accurate with this. And it speaks to the bigger question, right? If we're talking about cuts in the planning department and there's delays that are just come because we don't have the staffing, that impacts this number too. So it's, It's just, I'm trying to wrap my mind around how we can capture that number better. And I don't think we can.
Well, if you come up with a suggestion on how to do it, I'm all ears because I haven't been able to figure it out for 25 years.
Okay. Which means if I come up with a suggestion, you've already thought of it, I'm sure.
There's a chance.
Okay. I still think this is healthy for us to understand it.
Right, so that's taxes. We have an offset against that $97.5 million number, which is only 400,000. That is an overlay assessment or overlay of availability. We moved down to motor vehicle excise revenues at 3.6 million. And then most of the rest of revenues in the treasurer collectors area are budgeted flat year to year. Page 8, IT revenues is mostly E-rate revenues that are received by the general fund due to activity within the school department. Page 9 is city clerk fees, which are really pretty consistent over time. For example, city clerk permits were $136,000 in 2021. Year to date, they're $105,000 according to the date of this report. So they're about online. We budget again a little bit less just to allow some flexibility if things don't all come in. The big driver in this category is dog license fees, registration book, minor $1,500. On page 11, licensing board, again, fairly consistent historically in the $140,000 range for renewal of liquor licenses. Zoning Board of Appeals, again, fairly consistent in the low to the mid-20s year to year. Page 14, police administration. So there's been a fairly significant change in actual receipts this year, both because on-street parking revenue is down because of the issue with changing the meters over to the kiosks. And that also has an effect on parking fines, although there will be a little pickup in parking fine revenue as we move into the beach season. We are projecting that the revenues in both of those will bounce back in fiscal 23 and be on par with where they were in actuals for fiscal 21. Page 6.
I have a quick question for John. John, do we keep track of what the percentages of tickets that are appealed that we lose out on?
Yeah, I mean, I don't look at that, but we have that information. So, I mean, once a ticket is issued, you know, we do record that, and then if it's if it's revoked or waived, we would know that there was action taken by presumably the hearing officer in my department to do that, or one of the hearing officers to do that. So yeah, I don't have that off the top of my head, but
Yeah. for another conversation, I'd love to see some of that data because it might mean to us that we need to tighten up some of our ordinances because if people are successfully appealing our ticketing and it's possibly because the signage was incorrect or something that we can control in city council. So another issue for another day. It's been a long day.
Well, to that point, Counselor, we in fact have spent a good chunk of the past 6+ months reviewing parking ordinances for exactly that reason, to tighten them up, to correct issues that are wrong, to correct issues where, there was one ordinance that said this, and then 10 years later, there was another ordinance that said slightly different than what
Right.
said 10 years. And we know that throughout the city, there are many situations where the signage is either not there or doesn't reflect what the ordinance actually says. So
Right.
we're trying to tighten all that down. We are still working on it. It was a pretty big job. One of the things that Chip Payson worked on pretty extensively for a number of months. So you will be seeing that at some point
Great.
in the next fiscal year.
Awesome.
And then again, for exactly that reason, because yes, we do end up waiving a fair number of tickets because there was no signage or there was incorrect signage, and you can see it right there.
Thank you.
Or not see it.
No, really.
John, in that same, so on the actual, which 2021, that would be revenue collected regardless of what was appealed, correct? That would be actual revenue that was collected, not, doesn't take,
Right.
correct?
That's not a receivable. That is actual collections.
Right, and yeah, so I'm looking at 2019, it's 493, almost 494,000 that we collected. So I don't think the appeal has had a huge impact on these collections.
No, I don't think so. I mean, again, I don't have any data off the top of my head, but just listening to what goes on in the department, it's fairly consistent. It's not like there's some big spike in one year versus another. I mean, the signage, either correct or incorrect, has been out there for quite some time. And so, it has been fairly consistent. I wouldn't be surprised to find out that basically, the number of tickets waived in each year, again, is probably fairly consistent.
Councilor Worthley?
Yes. First of all, John, I'm very impressed with your command of this document, and I hate to admit, but it's a lot to process and be helpful and informative. So I'm just going to jump around a little bit to a few places. I have some questions, but I'm not ever saying I understand this better than anybody else in this room. I'm probably the least understanding of it. On page 5, halfway down, I'm looking at motor vehicle excise, and there's some, just discrepancies that I don't understand. You see where it says it's under 150, motor vehicle excise, MVE 21, 2021, $3.2 million. Do you see where I am?
Yep.
Okay. And you go over 2022 original budget, revised budget 0, and then actual was 788,000. So the first question is, what was the discrepancy between 3.2 million and 788,000? And
All right, so each one of these lines represents a fiscal year. So when we put the budget out there, so if you go out and look at what the 2023 budget amount is of 3.6 million, you will see that is on line 415023, which is motor vehicle excise for fiscal 2023. Now, what happens is that we continue to make collections on previous years. So next year, for example, you will see a big chunk of money still being collected on motor vehicle excise 2022 in 2023. So what you have to do is you really have to look at the actual. So the 2021 actual was 3,753,000. The 2022 actual at the date this report was printed was 3,448,000. So you got to be careful. The lines don't really matter all that much.
Right, so this
But
isn't,
because
this isn't reading left to right or up and down, it's almost diagonal.
yes, you have to read diagonally. So I mean that's the way our general ledger is set up. You know, there's other ways to do it, which would be just to have you know, a single line representing motor vehicle excise collections, and no matter what year was collected, it all goes into the same line. You know, you kind of end up in the same place.
I appreciate my confusion on that, by the way. So when I see 850,000 projected 2022 and then 0 in 2023, that's actually 0 because it's a collection timing thing. It's a little bit, honestly, I hate to express any weaknesses here. It's mind-boggling to me. And if any of my colleagues have this thing mastered, please.
Well,
speak up.
if you look at the last line, the 2023 mayor, they're anticipating 0 money from that line item. Okay, so they're anticipating the whole $303.6 million in their bottom one from the excise tax. Now, some of that won't happen, so that they'll have to redo, that number will change, but it'll be made up with previous year's numbers,
So if I were to compare 2022 actual, so I'm
which hasn't been
diagonal-
completely collected.
right? So diagonally, up and then up to.
If I could, I think it's just easier if you just look at where it says total motor vehicle excise and just follow that across. So fiscal year 21, 3.7 million, 22 original budget, 3.6, revised budget, 3.6, actual 3.4. Those are all years motor vehicle excise collected or budgeted.
So I was
And-
comparing years and totals and, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think for this purpose, I would just say look at total. We do have some reporting requirements with DOR and the outside auditors. So at times we do need to look at by fiscal year. That's why it may look a little confusing to you. But if I would say, I would recommend just look at the total for this account.
Thank you. That
And-
makes a big difference.
Yeah. And not look at by year. I think that might help.
I'm sorry to everyone for me being confused by that. So we're projecting, we're at 3.4 million through this fiscal year. We've got another 6 weeks. That looks like we're gonna be on track for 3.6. I mean, that makes sense now. Okay, sorry. Can I go to a different question? Last time I was on the council, there were some austerity measures which were, we were allowed or empowered to settle some tax liens, or not necessarily tax liens, but back taxes. Someone owes $100,000 in taxes. If you pay now, we'll take 80,000. You know, don't quote me on the policy or the numbers, but who does that? Is that your office that just collects and it's just a question of sending bills out, or do we have someone? We had a staff person who was hired literally to get these receivables and tax liens down. Do we have someone that does that?
Yes, and you saw that in the collector treasurer expenditure legal line, legal services. When we covered that section, I had mentioned that the legal services in the collector treasurer's department is primarily for tax lien collection activities. And yes, we have that. You can see if you go to, So on page 5, if you go up to kind of the top of the page, you see tax liens redeemed.
Mhm.
So 2022 actual, $611,000.
Okay. And then again, and maybe it's somewhere else, maybe I should look at the bottom line, 650 turns into 0 for this year, but that's,
Right, but again, as Kenny suggested, there are certain sections of the budget. Personal property taxes, real estate taxes, and motor vehicle excise, that you really just have to look at the total line to unravel what it's really telling you. Because again, we're capturing information by each fiscal year, but the really relevant information is what do the totals say?
If I may, Council Worthy, I believe you're asking, for example, we collected 611,000 in tax title, and why are we budgeting 0? And the reason for that is originally this was a real estate or personal property tax receivable, and we've already budgeted once. Typically, you don't budget for the same number twice. So it'll be collect. So it's just like the motor vehicle, you collect it in 23 and then you'll collect it in later years. So typically you only budget for that number once, and you don't budget for it twice. And it's not just a glosser, it's all 351. They all do it the same way. You typically don't budget a receivable or revenue twice.
so.
Yeah, excuse, that was a good explanation, Kenny. I misunderstood the question. Yeah.
I think that was his question. I may be wrong, but
No, you're right. So first, I want to thank you, Kenny and John, and I trust both of you. So this is not even a thing. I don't know if my colleagues, maybe because you've done it more often, just intuitively know when you see these numbers that's what it is, or do we just not even, for me, it's not questioning, it's trying to understand it. Val, Tony, Scott, is it that simple to everyone else?
Sometimes.
Yeah,
Also,
Thanks.
Jeff, in these, in this line item so it's highly volatile. In 2019, it was 182,000. In 2020, it was 52,000.
I'm not sure which line you're on.
2021, it was 48,000. So that 611 is very unlikely to show up.
Okay.
yeah, it's difficult to predict tax title. Typically tax title, if you have a good year in tax title, that will help with your free cash certification at the end of the year.
So if we follow that math, if you go down to the motor vehicle excise, again, 541 was the actual in 2021. And then the actual in 2022 is only 28,000.
So in fiscal year 21, the motor vehicle excise 21, we collected 3.2. The prior year, we collected 541 related to 20, and we would have budgeted the 20 in 20. So there's always typically, especially motor vehicle, where the bills are sent out typically in the February, March timeframe. So there are some revenues that do come in the next fiscal year.
Okay.
So in fiscal year 21, we collected 3.2 million, and then that 541 was related to 20 motor vehicle excise. So typically motor vehicle excise, you'll see a lag in the next year.
But that lag is, 541 to 3.2 million is a significant difference. But what I like to do is, I don't want to hold, I trust both of you and I trust my colleagues. Me not understanding it doesn't mean I don't support what's being done. So I just want to, this might not be the time for me to be educated.
Yeah, and just, what, as John mentioned, I would say, especially for real estate, personal property, and motor vehicle excise, just looking at those totals going across, I think that'll just make it easier. It'll just simplify it, and just look at the totals as opposed to focusing year by year or that tax year. And again, the reason why we have those tax years is there's a outside company that is interested in those numbers, and that's why we track it.
I'm humbled by my inadequacy here. So thank you for helping me.
Gentlemen, could you just briefly address on page 17? No, I'm sorry, on page 16, the ambulance charges, and I think it's about time for us to begin to do some write-offs again. I suspect during the course of the year from the fire department, what they've collected for actual ambulance fees charged, but I see it jumps around from 2 million back in 2021 down. You're projecting $1.5 million, even though actual was $1.070 last year. I know from experience, there's unfortunately a tremendous write-off between the billing and actually collected. And is that just a normal pattern that we expect?
And actually, the chief could actually speak much better to that, but I've been working with the chief, I believe last year. He did receive some, like a one-time payment. I believe it was Medicare payment. I think it was related to the CARES, like the CARES funding. And I want to say, I thought he received maybe close to $300,000 that he received at the end of fiscal year 21. I know we had a meeting with the ambulance collection, group and service, and I know we received one-time payment. I was just going to look that up. I don't know if John, if you recall.
So we got a payment last year and a payment the year before from the state that is kind of a correction from state funds in support of ambulance services. We don't know if that's going to be recurring. Year to date in 2022 is 1,070. We tend to get the revenue at the end of the month. So basically, my assumption was that we still had 3 more months to go, about another 300,000 or 400,000, over the course of time. So that's why we're projecting $1.5 million here, and then $1.5 million for next year. And yes, Councilor Memard, there will be some write-off information coming forward. That's typical of what happens every year.
Yep.
Even though we bill at a certain rate, Medicare is only going to pay us at their stated rate, and it doesn't matter what we use for the billing rate. We're not going to get any more than what Medicare is going to bill us, is going to send to us.
Right.
So we're going to have what looks like massive amount of write-offs each year, but we were never going to collect that anyway.
Understood. I just wanted to highlight that to the other councilors too.
Yep, good point.
It also looks like 2021 was an outlier.
It was.
It was about $500,000 higher than the previous 2 years. So probably had something to do with COVID and a lot of taxi rides with COVID.
Yeah, we had in September, we received a payment of $371,000. And then at the end of the fiscal year, we've received another payment of $367,000. As John mentioned, it was from the state. It was a one-time payment. I just, I don't, from my recollection talking to the chief, we won't be seeing those payments in 22 or 23.
Well, we can be very grateful for those 2 years that we did receive them, because in the past 7 years that I've been here, they've been a significant write-off that it's always painful. I mean, it's obviously a city service that's offered, but we didn't realize, exactly how much money we were billing, but then not able to collect. And we were spending a lot of time with the collection agency and all the rest on that. Separate question. I'm just interested in following up on the revenue from the wind turbines and how long that's projected for at this point. You have it listed on page 2 as being roughly $300,000 plus. On page 6, there are payments in lieu of taxes from the wind turbine equity firm of another, I guess part of it's Gloucester Housing Authority, but it's not broken down, another $78,000 there. Is that again stable. There've been some maintenance issues there. I don't know how long we can project out the continued revenue. And then we always raise the question this time of the year, should a group of city employees and volunteers be working again, as Paul McGarry did, to try and build further wind turbine capacity on the Cape, on city-owned land? And that's not a topic for the budget, but it just needs to be posted there.
Yeah, well, I guess as far as the wind turbine specifically goes, yeah, as long as there's wind and the turbines can turn, then we're going to generate electricity that we will then be paid for. When the wind turbines are down, they're not turning, so they're not generating anything. So it's all uptime and the amount of wind in regards to that. So we pick a number that's been pretty accurate on average over the past 8 years, and just hope it keeps going along.
Did you get turkey meat for my sandwiches?
There will be, at some point, wear and tear on those turbines. I don't know what that point is. I would have to, do some research on that. But we can probably expect that as they get older, there will be some increased downtime.
Thank you. Councilor Worthley?
On the wind turbines, who's responsible for maintenance? Please don't say Mike Hale, because we don't need to give him more things to do, right?
The equity firm that we partnered with.
Right. They're responsible for maintenance, and they get the vast majority of the revenue when it comes in, and we keep our share.
Do we have any responsibility to educate them, or I mean, they own it, right? And it's in their interest to maintain it too. But do we have any obligation to alert them to any kind of maintenance things, or is that all theirs?
That's all theirs. And they're they're the ones who are paying for it. So it is in their best interest to make sure that they maximize the uptime.
Right. Okay, so they're incented to do it anyway.
They are incentivized to do it anyway.
Yeah, so I'm on the same section real quickly, page 2, jumping back, cannabis fee. We collected $491,000 in 2021. We budgeted $500,000 in 2022. We received 0, or did it go somewhere else? I'm guessing.
We've received some, and I expect to receive more before June 30. But it seems to come in late in the fiscal year. So some of these revenues are seasonal.
But
You'll see that elsewhere as we move along.
You said we've received some, but we're showing 0 received in that line item. Again,
Because it hasn't been posted yet. So just because it comes through the door doesn't mean that it automatically appears here until it gets processed. And once again, remember that I pulled this report up, at this point, a month ago.
May 27th, April 27th, yeah.
That's okay. I just, based on everything else we're doing,
Does
now
that come from the state, or does that come from the actual leasee, the licensed cannabis operation individually?
This actually comes from the operators themselves, according to whatever the details are in the host community agreement that they signed with the city. So this is just between the city and the retailers or the growers.
I imagine that they're obligated to pay even while they have claims in court against the city's legal purview of the extent of the fees.
Well, that's what we're going to claim, Counselor, because there is still a signed host community agreement out there, and it has not been altered at this point.
Okay, thank you.
So, Mr. Dunn, you said if we received it but haven't posted it, it doesn't mean we haven't received it, right? So, but my thinking has been if we're 85, 90% through the fiscal year, we should be pretty close to that number on pretty much everything. Is there a question, like, do we have some money already in that? You said we had some, but where are we at? Like $500,000 is a big number to be missing, not missing, unaccounted for on this document. So I just wouldn't know to think.
So Counselor, there are some situations where, for example, we get almost all or most of a particular line item's revenue in the last 2 months of the year. So you're never going to see this in this budget document because it comes in after the document is printed.
So are we just assessing a fee that, we assess it June 1st and get paid sometime in June, or is this
This is the host community. Again, we're gonna do we want to spend another half an hour on this?
No,
Okay, so Counselor, I'd be happy to have a conversation with you about host community agreements and what they say.
I understand. Forgive me for seeing a zero and being, asking the question.
No, we're covering a lot of ground in the revenue department at the end of a busy day.
It's not like there's a lot of different sources coming, Jeff, and they have already signed the agreement that they owe us the money. So they are more than likely not giving us the money because it's earning them interest, and they're going to pay us, mid-June. If I was a business person, that's what I'd be doing. That's when the bills due.
See, that part I didn't know. Did we bill them and we expect to be paid in June? Like that's a,
We
Signed
do
an
not-
agreement.
No.
They have a
not billed.
legal agreement.
Yep.
Other counselor questions for Mr. Dunn or Kenny? We're winding up the end of a long day.
So we on page 17,
Page 17.
that where we ended up,
Yep.
where we went backwards.
sorry.
It's all right. Scott started it.
True. That's why I felt like you kicked the door in.
That's quite all right. Okay, page 17, inspectional services. Again, we kind of talked about this a little bit. So we kind of, this is predicated on building permits, electrical permits, gas permits, plumbing permits. And sometimes there are big years, and sometimes there are just normal years. So we've been fairly consistent in budgeting at around $1.2 million a year. We have also been fairly consistent in exceeding that, but again, much better to exceed it than to fall short. We don't want to fall short.
Good practices.
Page 18, animal control, modest. Page 19, shellfish control. Fairly consistent. There's actually been an increase in collections over the past 2 years. So that, this may be a thing that could increase modestly in the future.
Now, we don't see any of the violations that were brought in this revenue, correct?
No, we don't, Counselor. I'm not exactly sure where that does go. I'm thinking that it probably just goes to kind of a general violation account that's someplace else, but I'll see if I can run that down.
Okay.
We don't, these people don't troop into the collector's office to pay their fines. So I'd have to figure out, what the flow is.
Okay.
Very good.
All right,
They've ramped that up on the violations, I know.
okay.
Yep.
Page 20, solid waste disposal. So the bags, we talked about this a bit earlier. There is an increase year to year because of the different way we're going to be doing things. Page 21, modest amounts of revenue from the engineering department. Page 22, And this is another one going back to Councilor Worthley's comments earlier, where there are seasonal collections. So there's a relatively big hole in the budget if we look at daily parking. So the revised budget is $1,950,000, but we've only collected $1,200,000 to date. So if you're thinking that, this is a line that should be getting 1/12 of its revenue projection each month, you'd be wrong.
Right. 3 months of
So-
summer.
Right. So you've got 3.5 months of revenue collection for this line.
And
So again, you have to kind of keep in mind that some of these things are seasonal, and what is that season?
that's why I asked on the cannabis, because I feel like people buy marijuana year round, and I didn't know that it was a assessment.
So, yeah, we'll kind of get to that again a little bit later. So.
John, I got a question on,
Sure.
back on the solid waste disposal. So you said that the realtors, this number, this 1.2 includes what we've been paid back by the realtors who are selling the bags.
The retailers, yeah, that we expect to get in the future. So again,
So this is also, this includes what the homeowner pays for a bag plus whatever do the retail people, so I guess we buy the bags for $225,000. And then we give them to the retailers, correct?
yep,
And then they give us back 80 cents on that bag, 80 cents on a dollar or something on a bag.
yeah, I'd have to look at the exact details, and I'm sorry that Mark isn't.
That's all right. No, my question really is about just this bottom line of 1.2 million. We spend 20% of that money just buying the bags. Not in disposal, but just in buying the bags. That money is used up for that.
Yep.
20% of that 1.2 million is used up just purchasing bags.
That's my understanding, yes.
Yeah, okay. So think about that. That's not any tipping fee. That's just the bags.
Yeah, just the bags.
20% goes just to bags.
Councilor Gross, do you want to propose the increase in cost?
No, I just think that it's important that people understand that.
No, you're 100% right.
Okay. Sorry.
That's quite right. All right, so we got through page 22, talked about daily parking. Again, the seasonal parking passes relatively low too, but that should reach the 200,000 mark because we're selling them now. And we didn't start selling them until mid April. What else is on here?
We might be able to, if I could add, we might be able to realize a lot of extra money potentially through the new program, because the whole non-refundable thing, when we were collecting before, if it rains, you don't make money. But with this system, people are going to hopefully will reserve their space. If it rains, we get to keep that money. And that could be a sizable difference if the program runs right. We don't need to do anything about today, but that could be a big upside.
Could be. All right, page 23, Board of Health. Fairly consistent year to year. Revenues range from 140 to mid 150. Page 24. Here is the big one. So this is cherry sheet receipts. The top line is chapter 70. We talked a little bit about this before. The Chapter 70 formula statewide changed fairly radically, and this is the first year of its implementation. Statewide funding went up about 10% across the board. But as you can see, funding for Gloucester went up by 40%. There were, I think, as I remember the statistics, there was one community whose Chapter 70 receipts increased by like 45%. There were two that increased by 40%. And everybody else, there was a handful in the 30s, and everybody else was really clustered around. And again, the average increase was 10%. So there were a number of drivers here. Kind of to my way of thinking, it really kind of pointed out that the old formula really shortchanged Gloucester through the years. And it's, it's amazing, despite that, how consistently above school spending requirements Gloucester has been through the years. So, I mean, this is very good news, long overdue. Based on my conversations with the folks at DESE, they expect it to be permanent until the next calculation in Chapter 70. It goes statewide. They can't remember a time when Chapter 70 funding has decreased from year to year, except back in the mid-aughts. And then that was really just for 1 year. So this is something that's going to stick with us for quite some time. So that was really good news. It's great to receive it. It did allow us to do some of the things that have been noted before, put aside a stash for contractual settlements in the mayor's budget, increase the paving line in DPW budget, allow for the $500,000 worth of work on the schools to be done this summer. So, it's been there, and very, very happy to have received it, and very glad that the formula finally reflects the situation that has existed in Gloucester for years.
Yeah, so that's great that this is, going forward like this. I hadn't realized that was the situation. I thought, too often it's one-time monies that they increase it, in one budget. But in the early aughts, John, they erased our Chapter 70 money. So they took away, now they're giving back.
That's great. Good news.
Yep, it is. It's very good news. So other than that, there's really, really no change other than that top line, but it's a significant change and well received. Page 25 is other state receipts, hotel, motel excise, meals tax, some fines, court fines, Medicaid reimbursement for some expenditures at the school level. And then this is one of the other things that we were talking about. This last line here, this is the cannabis excise tax. So this is the tax that comes to the state, and this is our portion that flows back to us from the state collections. So like the two at the top, the hotel motel excise and the meals excise, both of these or all three of these are collected by the state directly from the retailer, and then the state remits a portion to the cities and towns. So this is what we've seen. This cannabis excise, we're we've already received 234,000 through 3 quarters. And we're projecting 250,000 in receipts for next year.
So if you add that to the community impact fee from cannabis sales, we're looking at $750,000 of revenue from that industry, which is new over the last 3 years.
Yes.
John, if we lose those lawsuits, are we gonna have to refund the money?
That's a good question, and really probably not appropriate for discussion
Okay,
right now.
you answered my question.
Okay, thank you.
I didn't even know we were being sued.
Yeah.
Read the Gloucester Times.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
A host agreements were pretty generous.
Yep. So page 26, other financing sources. The top line is again, something we talked about previously, to transfer in from the Concom fund for expenses. You know, this transfer in matches the expenditure budget for Concom that we reviewed earlier. The second line is transfers in from betterment funds. So these transfers in match the debt service that is going out, the debt service that is included in general fund debt service that we reviewed previously. This is a funding source for that betterment related debt, because we do in fact collect betterments. And that's what they're there for. The third line is based on a calculation of indirect costs for the water and sewer enterprise funds. So this matches 50% or matches double the expenditure in each of the water and sewer enterprise fund for indirect costs. There's a large number of indirect costs that are provided to the funds that are not basically covered by expenditures in the funds. Those indirect costs would be city council time and energy in my office, payroll time, any number of other things that go, mayor's office time, Kenny's
Purchasing.
time, purchasing. Yeah, so there's all sorts of
Legal.
indirect costs. There is a formula that we've been using for those indirect costs for a number of years now. It's fairly consistent. And you know, basically, you know, I think this is the right way to go, because those costs do exist, but they are not, you know, they're not covered by expenditures or proposed expenditures in the water and sewer enterprise funds. So that's it.
Okay, do we need to vote on these revenues or the bottom line or what?
Yeah, you need to vote the bottom line, not anything else.
There's 2 motions, Councilor Memhard.
Oh,
It's on page 12.
May I ask one quick question? I know it's been a long day. On that last page, page 26, transfer in from fund balance of free cash, $878,000 in 2021. Now we received, as I remember, not received, certified $5.5 million, right? And then it's showing a 0 there and then projected. So I just want to get my head around how we manage that, how we got 878, how we get to 0 compared to the $5.5 million. Just if it's a long answer, we can save it for another day.
So
The 878, are you thinking that that's all they had for free cash?
no.
No, I have
No,
no
it's not.
understanding of
No,
that.
that's
I
the
don't-
transfer that they did in 2022 into the budget. That's how I read it.
No, is it the fiscal year 21 actual? Is that the question, the 878?
yes, yeah.
So if I recall during, you know, in the general fund, so those are transfers that come in. So it's the trust fund. So my guess, I can look it up. It's transfers that probably came from the general stabilization fund to take care of snow and ice, or a contract. I think it might have been the fire contract.
It was the fire contract. Most of that was the fire contract, which was settled basically 2 years into the term, so that required funding for 2 years.
I just saw this as free cash as it's listed here. And so I thought that's our free cash line.
No, there's actually no free cash in this budget. So transferring from free cash is 0.
Right, so you were saying the 878 was a contract settlement or raise, but I'm just trying to get a sense as to, if we had $5.5 million, wouldn't that have shown in the 2022 actual?
So
No.
so it was SA2 for $620,000, and that was for the fire contract. And then there was another transfer. It was SA1, $258,827. And that was a transfer to the general fund. It looks like it was to reduce the revenue budget. I think that was just a COVID year. I think we were just concerned we weren't going to be able to make the revenue number on state aid. I think we were just, just being conservative. So that's the 878. It's SA1 and SA2 from 2021. Sorry, I have the information here in front of me.
But I'm not
So-
seeing that. I just want to.
Jeff, this is money that, you know how we transferred the $500,000
Mhm.
out of a stabilization fund? Well, this is what they did back in 2021. This has nothing to do with this budget. This was in 2021 that they transferred $878,000 out of free cash into the fire department and other assorted things.
What I'm trying to see is, we have $5.5 million in free cash. We transferred some in this year. We transferred some to stabilization, and then none of that seems to be counted here. If
It's
not
not.
here-
It's not related to this budget, no.
Not counted here.
Well, I'm just saying 2022 actual shows a 0.
Because they transferred that money out of those funds into the budget.
That's correct, Tony. You're correct.
I feel like we would see it here. This is not, again, questioning. I'm just trying to understand, like, how is it a 0? And we'll take this offline. some
Yeah,
other time.
I'll explain it to you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Andy, I'm not sure where I see your motion. There are 2 motions.
It's right in, it's right after the school department budget. There's 2, the heading is fiscal year 23 general fund revenues.
I'm sorry, are you talking about the budget, our budget book?
No, I'm talking about the motions, the motion sheet, page 12.
I'm looking at page 12 of this, of Grace's outline.
It's actually page 10.
Oh, sorry, mine is page 12. Sorry.
Okay. Okay, I see it all. Thank you.
Sorry.
No, not at all. So did we have further discussion at this point? I think John has outdone himself in terms of answering our questions.
Extremely thorough. Thank you.
I am always done.
You're done, all right.
All right, well, it's my pleasure to move to recommend that the city council approve the fiscal year 2023 general fund revenue, including other financing sources, in the amount of $128,044,055, and I so move.
Seconded, but I have 127,644.
So there's 2 motions. There's one that's the total revenue, and then there's a second motion for the overlay, the reserve for abatements. The net amount is 127,644,055.
Yeah, Jeff, you're correct. This is the first part of that.
Sorry. Thank you.
So motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call vote. Councillor Gross,
Yes,
Councillor Worthley,
Yes.
Councillor Memhard, yes. The city's budget in that amount, $128,044,055 is approved unanimously. Second motion is to recommend that the city council approve a fiscal year 2023 overlay reserve for abatements and exemptions in the amount of $400,000, and I so move.
Second.
And this makes a total net available net funds, as Mr. Worthley has pointed out, of $127,644,055. Motion is made and seconded. Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Councillor Gross,
Yes.
Councillor Worthley,
Yes.
Councillor Memhard. Yes,
What a day.
yeah. So
That
tomorrow
it?
night, that's it for us tonight. Tony, thank you very much for making the effort to be here. It was very much appreciated.
Now I got the ARPA meeting in 18 minutes.
And tomorrow we have a
2 meetings.
What? 5 o'clock school committee meeting and then the 3:30
Right.
state budget meeting. I'll look forward to hearing about the ARPA meetings.
All right. Motion to adjourn.
Oh, move.
Okay,
Second.
second.
Sorry.
motion been made and seconded. Roll call vote. Councillor Gross,
Yes.
Councillor Worthley, Councillor
Yeah.
Memhard, yes. Thank you very much, Councillor Gilman. Thank you, John. Thank you,
Yep.
Kenny. Thank
Thank
you,
you, John.
Sherry.
Thank you, Kenny. Thank you, Sherry. Thank you, Val.
Hey, let's do this again next year.
Yeah.
I don't know, we got done earlier last year, so Melissa had something on us.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you,
job.
Kenny.
Good job.
Good timing.